Ready, Set, STEM virtual event. And we wanted to do this on this day for this month to celebrate National STEM Day coming up. And of course, we will be covering everything that we can regarding STEM. Now, another thing we want to kind of put in your mind as you're getting into this first session is our social media contest. You can win big in 3 easy steps. The first is your takeaway. What was a takeaway you had from your session in 15 words or more? And then posting that on either Instagram or Twitter, known as X, and including the hashtag #ReadySetMimioSTEM. And then please tag us as well to help us find your post. And if you do those 3 things, you will be entered into that media contest where you can either win the grand prize or we are going to pick 3 winners to take home some amazing STEM goodies. Your deadline is November 7th, so you got some time. But if you want to, you can just get your post done first thing in this first session. And if you are picked up one of our 3 winners, you can win one of these 6 prizes: a 10-pack PLA filament, 2 lab disc heart rate sensors, a MyBot floor mat of your choice for robotics, a MimioView document camera, a MySTEM Kits teacher plan, or a class set of pre-printed MySTEM Kits sailboats or ball-bearing catapults. Now, if you're the grand prize winner, there's 1 winner. You get to choose between 2 amazing products. You can either choose the Robo E3 that also includes the 10-pack of filament as well as a MySTEM Kits teacher plan, or you can choose the Lyric portable sound system. So those are the 2 grand prizes. But we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to jump into our first 2 sessions. So we're going to start with Kevin and Daniel.
Hey, everybody. All right, good deal. Okay, y'all, I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, so hopefully you can all see this. And if you have any questions or anything like that at any point, feel free to drop any questions or anything like that down in the chat. But what I wanted to spend about 20, 25 minutes talking about was ways over, the last several years of teaching science that I have kind of explored in making science not only something that is fun for the kids and it's exciting and things like that, but also very relevant teaching. One of the things that we do at our school is we have school-wide meetings. And in these meetings, the head of our school, Ron Clark, he will get up there and he'll talk about a lot of the current events and things like that are going on in the world. And, kids are pretty intrigued by that. But then I got to thinking to myself, there's a lot of current science right now that's going on in the world. There's discoveries being made. There's rockets that are being launched. Like there's Starlink that's going up, and we're trying to go back to the moon and things like that. And so I'm trying to think to myself, what are ways in which I can bring everyday current event science, relevant science to my classroom, and that will help kids kind of see themselves as scientists. And I think that's the overall goal of what I'm trying to do here. And I think it's what a lot of us are trying to do. I was driving to work the other day and I literally got behind this truck and the word vector was on the back of the truck. And I'm like, I wonder if any of my kids will see it, they'll notice it, and they'll think, oh, vector. Like we study that in physics class. And so trying to get them to see science all around them, but also trying to get them to see themselves as a scientist or somebody that knows a thing or two about science. And so that's kind of the overall goal here of what we're going to talk about. All right. So first off, these are kind of the main cogs of what we're going to talk about. Then at the very end, I'll throw something in there that also is something that really helps me in keeping things relevant in what I'm teaching with the students. So first of all, let's talk about relevant strategies. So something that I figured out is a few years ago, you can probably see some of these graphics here are, they're a little retro dated, but nonetheless, they're a good topic of discussion for this. Finding things that kids like, right? Finding things that they're interested in. So a couple of years ago, I started I was just teaching science. I was trying to figure out ways in which I can get kids interested in mundane topics in a way that you would get them excited. And so kids today, y'all, we're as teachers are competing with YouTube. We're competing with TikTok. We're competing with Minecraft and Instagram and all these different things, right? These video games, Call of Duty, so Roblox, so on and so forth. And because we're having to compete with those, instead of necessarily bashing them and going in against them, because I've had those teachers too, right? Like join the fray, right? And so it's kind of like, if we're talking about how can I get kids to understand solutions, Maybe I have them make an Instagram post about solutions. They read this article and they have to summarize this article. Maybe they make a tweet, and in that tweet, they can only say the amount of characters that Twitter offers you. So they're having to summarize the text. Can they, in science, we're all about labeling things. So if they draw a picture on Instagram, can they label things? Can they explain scalars versus vectors in a picture? Forces, motion, speed. How would you visualize that and explain it in a picture? And so those are certainly things that I try to go for when I'm creating these strategies. We have teachers at our school that they use TikTok as a way of displaying different types of visual effects for their class. One thing I love to do whenever we're studying the body systems is whenever we do the circulatory system, I want the students.
Warning in progress.
There we go. I want the students to model the pathway that blood takes through the heart. So I've always had to make this stop motion video, which they love. But then I got to thinking one day, like, what if I had the kids make, kind of a TikTok video? But this TikTok video, it's a little more, they're gonna have captions and different things like that. Why make a TikTok video? Because it's what exists in their world, right? These are things that they're excited about in their world, and so those are different things that I go for when it comes to the relevant strategies, right? And maybe not even thinking so much, I'm going to do Instagram and I'm going to do TikTok and I'm going to leave this there. What are things that your students like, right? Like that's trying to get you in that mind frame. What are things that your kids like that can make the learning of science content easy for your kids? All right, next up, current events. So this is something that I try to pull into my class at least twice a week. I will spend the first 5 to 10 minutes a day. I may have my kids do a bell work. I may have them do a do now. Let's get it started, something like that, 4 or 5 questions. And then maybe the last question has to do with something that I have been teaching or I've taught them in 6th or 7th grade that's happened. A great example was, I believe it was last year, there were volcanoes that were erupting in like Hawaii. And so I asked all my grades about those volcanoes, and I might even ask them, what type of volcano is Mount Kilauea or something like that in Hawaii or Mauna Kea or something like that. And then I let that bleed into what's really happening in the world. Then what I'll do is I'll spend the next 3 to 5 minutes extending off of that. Now, it's really helpful because sometimes I get challenged with, how do I spiral back and hit old content that's going to be on this standardized test, right? Or how do I introduce new content? So this may be something new for my 6th graders to learn about, but for my 7th and 8th graders, they've learned about this. We're talking about cells, or we're talking about acceleration in 8th grade. But I want to talk about volcanoes today because there's one erupting. It's a great opportunity to spiral back and spend 5 or 10 minutes talking about the types of volcanoes, lava versus magma, the signs of volcano eruptions, all those things without it being like today. It's a way to pull in those different current events into the lesson. All right. So next up, cross-curricular. In any school, anytime we can bring in things that are happening in other teachers' classrooms, I think that is vital to what we're doing. And so an assignment that I used to do my first couple of years teaching, I wanted kids to practically do circuits. It's kind of like a PBL assignment, right? And I wanted them to make a series circuit and a parallel circuit. So I'd have them come up. They would wire a series circuit. They would wire a parallel circuit. And I'd say, all right, you passed. Great. The smallest thing ever. It was terrible. I've learned from those experiences. And so now what I have the students do is I have the kids make a shoebox house. I got this idea online, but then I was like, I want to take it a step further. And I want to have the kids use what they've learned in Miss Barnes and Miss Wallace's art classes, and I want them to design props for the inside of the house. They have to make everything. Then I want them to use what they've learned in my class, and I want them to wire series and parallel circuits in the house. Then I want them to use what they've learned in their math classes, and I want them to use interest rates, percentages, things like that. And I want them to create a price according to the market that we have now, which is insane, of what their house may cost. They then go and they use their ELA skills and they design a Zillow webpage using like PowerPoint or Google Slides or something. And then what will happen is I'll invite teachers around. I'll give the teachers fake money, and the teachers will go around and they will hear the students pitch. So you're working on social skills now. The students will try to get a deposit from the teachers as they go around the room. But I tell the teachers, you can't give them a deposit if these kids don't have working lights in the house and they don't explain the series and parallel circuits to you. And those are the most important things. So they're just trying to raise the most money. Now, how do I grade it? Outside of all of that, I have a rubric that I will go and check off and make sure all the kids have they've scored what they should score based on the rubric. Because some things happen, y'all. Like these kids will have the perfect circuits all week long. Then what will happen is right before the sale, the lights won't work or they'll cut out or something like that. So I'll grade them, fairly according to what I saw beforehand. But during the sale, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make this science learning fun. Whoever can raise the most money, in our school we have houses, I'll give them house points. But then also what will happen is I'll take that group to get ice cream or something like that later on to kind of make it a little more special for those students. So using strategies learned throughout the school, cross-curricular, it helps pulls different elements into science teaching. Okay, dress up. This is one of my favorite things that I'll do in my class to make it fun. On those days, y'all, where you're kind of like, oh, it's Monday, or oh, this week seems like it's really long, or whatnot, I dress up. And I will, when I teach volcanoes, I have an apron. It's got a big old volcano in the middle of it. I've got this wig that I wear. It's a troll's wig, and it's red. There's times when I teach about the nitrogen cycle, and it deals with poop. And I will dress up as a cow. I've got one of those blow-up cow costumes, and I'll walk around the room like a cow. And people, I think, often are intimidated by dressing up because you think, I have to play that character the entire day. And there's different ways to do it. But it gets kids excited. It's really fun. It's fun for me because I haven't dressed up in forever. And I was never a dress-up kind of guy. Like, throughout my adolescent years, I was always one that was like, I don't want to dress up or whatever. And doing it now, it's fun. And I realize the kids enjoy it. And it's something that's different. And at our school, I will ask educators on Fridays, whenever we have our professional developments, I'll say, how many teachers did you have in your life that crawled across the table? How many teachers did you have that sang songs? How many teachers did you have that dressed up like a cow or whatever? And the answer is always like 0 or 1 or 2 or something like that. And I think that's the sticking point, y'all, is that there's not a lot of teachers that do these things. So in our science classes, if we do these things, kids will not only remember you forever, they'll remember your content. Like, think about some of the mnemonics that you remember. Like, you remember PMAT, and we remember, like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, and things like that. Like, we remember all of those little mnemonics and funny things because those were things that stuck with us. I mean, I would have a teacher that taught us a song. And so those things stick in our heads. And when we do little things like this, they're so different and far out to kids. Kids remember these things. And that's a way that not only are we making science fun and we're making it relevant, but it's something that it's a sticking thing with kids. If they want it to stick, it'll stick, and we're helping that stickiness, I guess you can say. All right. The next up is passion. Whenever we're teaching, the more interested we can be in the topic, the better. So, an example of this is whenever I teach rocks and minerals, I've always just been taught rocks and minerals and the properties of minerals, and I've been taught things like the characteristics of a mineral. Then I'll be taught about rocks, and here's what the 3 types of rocks are, and the rock cycle and stuff like that. And the teacher would go on to the next thing because, come on, we don't have, 300 days to teach these kids. We got to get this content in. 180, y'all probably feeling that right now. 180 some days, like, let's go. We don't have that much time, or 170, depending on your state, your district. So how do we, how do we get passionate about minerals and rocks? Well, I try to think about driving questions that I've always had. And then I'll try to use those to share with the kids and get the kids thinking about stuff. And so it's, why do we do these things? And, I tell the kids, like, well, where did the earth come from? And then I'll just get that conversation going, right? And there's a lot of things that we don't know about where the earth came from. And how old is the earth? And you've got your different theories about how old the earth is and how long it's been around and stuff like that. And so, were there dinosaurs and were there not dinosaurs? How long ago did dinosaurs walk the earth? And you've got kids that feel strongly about some of those opinions. And that really gets kids kind of engaged in the conversation of what we're talking about. Because at any point, y'all, people have had those questions in their head, right? Like, how long has this been here? And where did it come from? And what are those things? And so I'll kind of segue into, these are the reasons. Why do we go to the moon, right? We learn things from rocks and minerals. There's stories in rocks and minerals. And then I'll try to tie in that relevant piece, right? All these kids know about the movie Frozen. And I think there's like a line in Frozen where Olaf says, water has memory, right? And I kind of treat that like rocks have memory. These rocks have been through a process. And if we can analyze these rocks and study these rocks, and we can get really, intuitive data on these rocks, we may find out, how was the moon formed? Why are there this many planets and they're this far apart? Is the universe expanding? Are there other solar systems, etc., out there in galaxies in the world? And how old is the Earth? How did it get here? And were there dinosaurs? And all these little things, right? How are the different continents formed and shaped and stuff like that? And so there's a lot of answers that we have in that. But the big idea is some of you, hopefully, like, you can feel there's passion there. There's interest there, right? And kids feed off of our interest, okay? Like, I was bedazzled this time, y'all. I was watching Apollo 13 one day, and I couldn't believe, like, when the shuttle will detach, spin around, and then reinsert itself into the Saturn V rocket and into the lunar module and take off to the moon. And that's all happening at like thousands of miles per hour. And I was baffled by the fact that that's what happens. And I was just sharing it with the kids. I was actually sharing it with a friend of mine. And my friend said, you need to teach it to the kids the same way you just told it to me. Because he's like, I don't give a rip about rockets. But now I'm like, that sounds like really interesting, just because of how interested I was. Right? Have you ever had somebody that, like, they got a new thing, and then you kind of started wanting that thing because of how interested they were in the thing? It's like, I want to be a part of that thing, right? So it's our passion, it's our purpose. Okay, and so something else that I'll do is, you see these kids here in lab coats. I want my kids to be passionate about science, and like I said at the beginning, I want my students to see themselves as a scientist, right? And so I learned at the inner city school I was teaching at, these kids enjoyed math and they enjoyed reading. None of them, when they first start the school, except for like 2 or 3 of them, really love science. And I'm not going to accept like 3 or 4 of my kids love science. I want, like, if I've got 30 kids, come on, give me like 80% of y'all that like genuinely love this stuff, right? And so I want my kids to see themselves that way. I teach them the vocabulary. I want them to talk in that vocabulary, speak those things, talk those things. And so with these students here, I decided, you know what? I'm going to create this priority table. And if you sit at this table, you have to earn it. But when you sit here, you get to wear these lab coats, and you can wear them throughout the school. I bought them lab coats, and then I said, you know what? You can wear these coats throughout the school anywhere you want to. You can wear them. And then the other teachers, they'll kind of play along with me when they would see a kid in the hall in their lab coat, and they would say, "Hey, how'd you get that coat?" And that kid would feel so much pride. They would say, "Oh, let me tell you, Mr. Thompson's classroom, here's what I did to get this coat. I had to take this blah, blah, blah. I had to build this house, this circuit house. We got the most money for our deposit for our houses that have the circuits. And so we got the coat." And the kids are really proud about it. And it's those little things where the kids start seeing themselves as scientists. And so the funny thing about this class is there are two girls in this class. One of them, I don't know if you see my cursor, but she's right here. She's sitting on the left. It's Amaris. She never, Amaris and another student, never had any kind of interest in science at all. And both of them right now are in school at Emory in Atlanta to become doctors. And so I just thought it's really cool and it's helpful, y'all. Because if they become a doctor, maybe I can get some free health care. So we got to think about that. We're raising up the vets and the doctors and the pharmacists. We can get the medicine, the dogs taken care of, and our health care. It's kind of nice. We need it in the economy right now. All right. And so group work. I'm almost done here, y'all. Now I'll take a look at those questions. So group work. So in my mind and in my classroom, I think that 3 people is a perfect group. Whenever I start going above 3, I feel like, oh gosh, like, what's that other kid? Like, I feel like that kid's not quite involved himself or whatever. So I've created roles for these groups. And these roles, I've grabbed some of these from different places and stuff, but each person in the group has a role. And so let's say that you do have 4 kids. That's kind of the standard numbers, 4 kids in a group. If there's 4 kids in a group, each one of them has a job. I go over the job very early with them. For example, I don't like it when a ton of kids are in my classroom standing up. So my manager is the only kid that can get up the entire time that the lab is going on. Unless the kids got to go to the bathroom or something, that's fine. But they go and get materials. They take them back. The communicator is the only one that can talk to another group. They're the only one that can turn. That way it eliminates kids turning and messing with other groups and talking to other groups. If it's the communicator, it's fine, unless they're not talking about what they should be. But if they're the ones talking and said, "Hey, on number 5, it says share with another group. What y'all get on number 5?" And so they're just communicating. The note taker, of course, they don't jot down all the data. They all should be jotting down the data. The note taker's really jotting down things like, I call them foot stompers. I got this from one of my old professors. They would stomp their foot whenever they would go through the lab, just a gentle tap. And that stomping of the foot was, you need to take note of what I'm about to say, because this part's a little tricky on the lab, and they would tap their foot so they would never have to stop talking, but it would like cue you into, hey, what I'm about to say is important. Make sure you jot it down. Every quarter, because we have 4 quarters at our school, these roles rotate. The leader becomes the manager becomes the communicator becomes the note taker. Why? Because I think that all the kids should have a chance at being in one of those roles at some point in time. You may find, hey, this kid's not as good at being the leader as that other kid. Yeah, but how do you know unless you try? And so I think that at this age, kids have got to find out what skills and assets do I have, because if they're going to go to high school or go to college, or they have to be able to know, here's my skill set. And so it's a way for them to know. All right. Y'all, I got to hustle. All right. So, am I stuck? Okay. So songs. So this is one of the last things I wanted to leave you with. In my classroom, sometimes I let the kids pick my songs, but I have learned the power of music. When music is playing and labs are going on, or a little heartbeats playing as kids are dissecting, the ambiance, it sets the tone. It makes it exciting and fun and things like that. So I have a full-on playlist that I'll share with you. I wanted to share my contact information with y'all. And so for anything that if you've seen something on any of my social media, or if you go there and you see something, on that QR code is where it's at. And so I'll leave it right there for just a second if anybody needs that. And then lastly, I wanted to leave my contact information if anybody needed anything. And then while y'all are, if you're looking at the contact stuff, I just wanted to see if anybody had any questions. Okay. Oh, Hannah's taking care of the contact information and things like that for me. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everybody. That was our first session. Thank you to our two presenters. And for the folks that are coming back into the main room, let us know in the chat what were some of your biggest takeaways or highlights from your last session. We have folks saying they love the ideas using 3D printers. A lot of great ideas. So let us know in the chat what stood out to you as we get ready for our next two sessions.